I want to welcome everyone to tonight's event. Andy Z, host of the Revolution Nothing Less show, the weekly YouTube show of the REVCOMS, is here tonight, and we're going to be doing something very important. Andy is going to be speaking on and entertaining questions, comments, engaging in back and forth with the audience around the new broadsheet, We Are the REVCOMS, Revolutionary Communists. We're working for a real revolution and a whole new emancipating way to live. And it is fitting that this is happening in Revolution Books. Because Revolution Books it's a bookstore, but it's a bookstore with books about the world and books for a new world. It's a place where people need to come in now, and more need to come in to engage in discussion about the major questions of the day, to dig into the literature that can help them get an understanding of why things are the way they are, the imagination that can unleash their desire to see a new world. It's a place that's an arena of contention, but also an arena of attraction and unleashing the vision of ways the world could be. Here you will very importantly find the work of the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, who has developed a whole new framework of human emancipation. We call it the new communism. If you are regularly coming to Revolution Books, and I see that some of you are regulars, keep on coming. Come a little more regularly. If you're new to the bookstore, don't be strangers. Come back around. We want to see you again. We want to get into things with you. And with that, I want to bring up Andy Z.
All right, well, my computer went to sleep, but I'm not going to put you to sleep, I promise. There we go. Remember when you had to learn the first password, and you're like, how the hell am I ever going to do that? And now you have about 40 of them in your head? It's crazy. Anyway, I'm really glad to be back at Revolution Books, and I'm definitely very psyched about this statement that we, the REVCOMS, have put out, and I'm very happy you're all here. And we're going to be broadcasting this on the RNL, Revolution Nothing Less show, or a portion of it at any rate. Listen, if you don't want your voice, even your voice in asking a question, let us know afterwards. Otherwise, trying to translate through the person holding the mic is going to be difficult. You know, I think we're all here, and we don't have to. That tape doesn't have to go anywhere. So, as I said, I'm glad to be with you all here tonight. And this evening, we're going to discuss this broadsheet. And they were kind enough to bring one here. This proclamation from the REVCOMS. And after these opening remarks, I'm going to take questions, and let's bring this over here. I'm going to take questions, and I'm going to offer some answers, and we're going to open it up for discussion as we go along. And then afterwards, we can have some informal discussion. I'm going to point to some of the main features of this proclamation to ground our discussion. But first, I want to get a sense of how many of you have had a chance to actually read this proclamation. Okay, well, that's most of you. Well, I'm going to remind you of what's in it in any case. But I wasn't sure when I was thinking about preparing for this. But before we get into this, We Are the REVCOMS, what it says and what it calls for, including what it calls on all of you to do, why it's being issued at this moment, the role that this proclamation can and needs to play, to repeat some of what Carl said, the fact that you are here at Revolution Books means you are concerned. You're thinking about the state of the world. You're curious. You're serious. You're looking for answers. And you didn't come to The World is Fine, It's All Good bookstore. You came to Revolution Books, where, if you didn't know it before, revolution in our name is not a lifestyle change. It's not a pose. It's not a marketing slogan. It's not a brand. It's an urgent and it's a serious mission, an objective whose urgency and possibility accelerates every week. The statement, "We are the REVCOMS," speaks to that. But now I realize I'm standing in front of this. We are the REVCOMS, revolutionary communists. We are working for a real revolution and a whole new, emancipating way of life. Boom, there it is. It's spoken. It's declared. It's an abbreviation, the REVCOMS. It's an abbreviation for revolutionary communists. Communists who are communists on the basis of the new communism developed by Bob Avakian. The REVCOMS, it's an abbreviation. That's a new word. An abbreviation that needs to become known far and wide. A nascent vanguard force. A force to build. A force to be part of. A force to join. A force to support. A force to do what? To work for a real revolution. And what for? Again, a whole new, emancipating way of life. This is what we, the REVCOMS, put before the world, our determination, our scientific understanding that there is an urgent need, that there is the basis and the possibility to prepare now for a real revolution, to overthrow the system of capitalism, imperialism. That is the source of the existential threat to humanity and to all of the madness that people here and around the world suffer from. We are the REVCOMS states that we are determined, number one, to prepare the people and to organize the forces for a real revolution that must finally lead in defeating the violent enforcers of this system. Two, that we aim for nothing less than abolishing this system with all of its oppressive institutions and its governing U.S. Constitution. Three, we aim to establish a far better system based on the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America, written by Bob Avakian. This Constitution would provide the means to bring into being a society free of all slavery, of all exploitation and oppression based on class, race, sex, and gender, and all relations in which one part of humanity is subordinated and dominated by others. That's our objective. We're about making revolution, we're about winning a revolution, and we're about winning a new way for humanity to be. Back in New York, I live in Los Angeles a good deal of the time now to do the show. And here in New York, in the wake of the vigilante choking of the death of Jordan Neely, a troubled man, an ill man by all reports, but an incredibly talented dancer and mime who could glide a Michael Jackson moonwalk not on a slick and polished stage, but on the grid of a subway platform, transforming the drudgery and the tedium of an outmoded public transportation system that's underfunded for the masses of people, and transform it in a moment into a sublime, uplifting moment, and into a place of beauty. With the air, the breath snuffed out of him, Jordan Neely's killing has touched a number of live third rails of this time in this cesspool of a country. The callous, criminal suffocation and demonization of the poor, the homeless, the infirm, the mentally ill. It stabs at the wound of white supremacy, taken to a new depth with the legitimation of vigilantism across this country and from the highest levels of bourgeois politicians and media. It concentrates the hardening and the accelerating fascist movement in the funds raised for Jordan's killer, just as they did for Kyle Rittenhouse and George Zimmerman, cheered on by the Republican fascist politicians and the media. And yet, with the mainstream Democratic Party far from repudiating this, are arresting protesters, sweeping up the homeless, and as my comrade Lenny Wolf brought out in last week's RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, revealing the class dictatorship that we live under. Which brings me back to the importance of this statement. We are the REVCOMS, revolutionary communists, working for a real revolution in a whole new emancipating way of life. So who is this proclamation addressed to? Well, it says here on the front page, to everyone who can't stand the world the way it is, who is sick and tired of so many people being treated as less than human. And these are but the opening two lines, as this preamble goes on to include all who we agonize over the state of things today, everyone who hungers for a world without oppression, exploitation, poverty, and the destruction of the environment, everyone who has the heart to fight for something that is really worth fighting for. Oh, good. That's over here. And we call on all of you and everyone who feels this way to become a part of this revolution. And those of you who are here tonight at Revolution Books or who are watching online at the RNL show, and those of you who support or sympathize with or who are themselves REVCOMs, are you taking this out and putting this before everyone who's described in that opening paragraph? And if so, we want to learn from your experience. And if not, why not? Why not? We can discuss that tonight. Because there is no revolution without millions of people. And it's got to start with hundreds and thousands, and they have to know about it. And that depends on all of you. For this is a stark fact. A revolution, when the conditions present themselves and the initial thousands have been organized, then requires millions to overthrow the system that we live under. And if you're keeping this message from the masses of people who do care but don't know about this revolution and the leadership we have, then the seed of this proclamation will not bear the fruit of a radically new emancipating society, a new radically emancipating way that people could live here and around the world. And that would be a great crime. So let's take a look at the statement as it's put on the broadsheet, which again needs to be distributed far and wide and find its ways up onto the walls in the streets and in the stores and community centers, in the schools, on the bulletin boards. Everywhere there are people who are described in this opening paragraph. I want to briefly point to three things that are in this first column here. Number one, we base ourselves on an understanding of what is the problem. And in doing that, we base ourselves on the scientific method and approach that Bob Avakian has brought forward that enables us to understand what is the problem we face. Number two, that problem and this method reveals that it is the system of capitalism imperialism that is the source of all the outrages and madness that people are subjected to here and all over the world. And we draw special attention to the existential threat to the survival of humanity and much of life on Earth in the present danger of world war between the U.S. and Russia and China, as well as to the existential threat to the environment that is brought on by this system of capitalism imperialism. And the third thing that's gone into in this opening section of the declaration, the proclamation, We Are the REVCOMS, is three, that the very extremeness of the time we live in, and particularly the sharp divide among the rulers of this system in this country, opens up the unusual, the rare, and the unique time when a real revolution to overthrow this system could be possible. I'm going to read now what it says about this possibility. This is a rare time when the capitalist imperialists who rule over us in this country are deeply divided in a way they have not been since the Civil War in the 1860s. And the country is being ripped apart, with one section of the ruling class moving toward an outright fascist form of rule, with the other fighting for the horrific way things have been. They cannot resolve these differences. They cannot resolve these deep divisions and hold the country together on the basis of the normal way this system is operated. And in any case, that normal way is full of oppression, destruction, and the real danger of wiping out humanity. And for these reasons, this revolution that we are working for is urgently necessary and more possible. And this column concludes with this, quote, Bob Avakian has sharply expressed this profound reality. We can no longer afford to allow these imperialists to continue to dominate the world and determine the destiny of humanity. And it is a scientific fact that humanity does not have to live this way. A whole different way to organize society, a whole better world is possible. And this leads to the heart of the statement. Right here. Shaping up before us now are two fundamentally opposed futures. Fundamentally opposed. Something terrible or something truly emancipating. And because of this, we are determined, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, to do these three things. And again, I'm going to read from this statement, and this should ground our discussion. The first is to seize on this rare time to develop the basis to actually make revolution, to finally defeat the violent enforcers of this monstrous system, and this means organizing for this revolution now among the most bitterly oppressed and from all parts of society, first in the thousands and then in the millions, and doing so consistently with a countrywide perspective, politically impacting all of society and changing the terms of how masses of people see things and how every institution in society has to respond. Developing the conscious, organized, revolutionary forces to the point where, with millions won to revolution, it will then be possible to have a real chance to win. Now, there's a lot packed into that first point, but it's a very decisive point if we are going to be getting that something truly emancipating and not the future that's going to be truly terrible. The second point, it says in the center of the column of this broadsheet, to abolish this system with all of its oppressive institutions and its governing U.S. Constitution, a document written by and fundamentally serving the interests of slave owners and capitalist exploiters, from the founding of this country down to today, a document that restricts the notion of freedom to what is possible within the killing confines of the system of brutal exploitation and murderous oppression. Again, that's a deep point, that the freedom of this Constitution that we live under is restricted to the killing confines of this system of brutal exploitation and murderous oppression. Number 3, to establish a far better system based on the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America written by Bob Avakian, which provides a sweeping vision, a firm foundation, and a concrete blueprint for bringing into being a society and ultimately a world free from all forms of slavery, all exploitation and oppression based on class, race, sex, and gender, all relations in which one part of humanity is subordinated to and dominated by others. This socialist system, in uprooting the capitalist imperialist system in this country and supporting revolutionary struggle in the world as a whole, will create a realistic possibility and will move systematically and effectively to address the already acute and fast accelerating environmental crisis, while also moving to abolish nuclear weapons with the ultimate goal finally of abolishing wars among human beings with the abolition of the capitalist imperialist system and all systems and relations of exploitation and oppression which are the basis for wars. So how do we go about doing this? Well, that's what's in the third column, where it outlines that we have the method, the strategy, and the plan to make this real. So to make what I have so far outlined from this statement a real revolution is a really big deal. I'm not going to kid you, and we're not kidding you. It's a hard road. It's a road that's going to require a lot of sacrifice. But there is no other way out of the madness of the society today and the terrible future that is unfolding before our eyes almost every week. So don't hide your eyes. Don't cover your ears. And in 1,000 ways, don't avoid the reality, both the horror and the potential for a real revolution that requires sacrifice, but yes, for a liberating future. Don't turn away, stick your head in the sand, or make excuses to go along with the way things have been, standing apart from or even bad-mouthing the revolution. So let's not throw away this rare opportunity to be a part of bringing something much better into being. All the more so because there is the leadership of Emancipating and the REVCOMS, with the tools in the science of revolution, the science of the new communism, that you can take up, along with the strategy, the vision, and that concrete blueprint in the Constitution for the new socialist republic, for a radically new society that will get us on the road to overcoming all forms of oppression and exploitation all over the world. That's a long, arduous struggle, but without overthrowing the state power that we live under and establishing a new society that gives backing to the masses of people to throw off these forms of exploitation and oppression that have been legacy for thousands of years, we don't have a chance. But with this, we have a chance. So look, we can get into as much of this tonight as you want, or as we have time for, and as much as I can hold up for, but let this be the beginning of an urgent, liberating process to fight for the future of humanity. A crucial start of this process is spreading this manifesto, this proclamation, this statement, this broadsheet, whatever you want to call it. We are the REVCOMS, far and wide, digging into it, as we will begin to do tonight. This year, we're putting revolution on the map, and we are calling on all of you to be a part of doing that. So with that, as a background and a foundation, I want to open this up for discussion, Q&A, and, raise your hand if you want to, have the courage of your question, We'll just get into it. We'll do our best, and there's a lot of people here who have some things to say, so let's do that. All right, so I'm sure a lot of people, or some people, you came with questions, because if you read this, you must have some questions or things to say. So I'll call on people, and you will bring the microphone around. So who wants to be first? The advantage of being first, I'll point out, is you can sort of say whatever you want, and later on people get a little more impatient, but now you can sort of just, whatever you say, people are going to say, oh, good, glad they went first, not me. All right, come on now. Yeah, with the black...
Hello?
Hi.
Why don't you address the largest problem that exists? The largest, at least, like monetary largest, or by number of heads, number of people that concern. And
I might not have heard you fully. So why don't I address the largest problem?
Why don't the organization address the largest problem that exists?
Yeah, maybe take the mask.
Yeah. Why don't you address the largest problem that exists?
And what do you think that is?
I think it's a real estate bubble. Like 100 million Americans are into the renting scheme. They are renting slave. They serve to the overlords.
Okay, so just to be, the question is, why don't I address? Why don't I pick up the water that just dropped, or you can do that. Why don't we address the largest problem that exists, which is, why don't I address the largest problem that exists, which is the real estate problem, and that people are paying rent to the landlords.
Yeah, real
correct?
Estate bubble. Yeah, okay. Real estate
All
bubble.
Right. I got that. Well, let me get a couple more questions, and we'll come back to that. Oh. Over here. Wait, just wait for the microphone so we can get the...
It's the microphone. Is it possible that BA could appear on the R and L show more? And would it be too expensive to do it as a daily?
Too expensive to...
Instead of once a week, 5 or twice. And can Bob BA do more live or live on tape?
All right. I'm going to ask the staff if somebody has I left my pad and pen in the back. Let me take one more question right now to start, and then that's about what I'll, Yeah.
When we abolish this oppressive and exploitative system, what type of power are we going to hold? And what direction are we going to go?
Okay, so let's address these questions in this order. I think to start with, I'm going to answer some questions, and then we can get more of a, if people hear a question and they want to speak to it, raise your hand, and maybe I'll call on you to answer it, but we'll see. First off, can Bob Avakian be on the Revolution Nothing Less show some more? Well, if you watched all 3 interviews, you'll notice at the end of the 3rd interview, I invited him back. But it's not a... oh, wait, I don't need this, but put that away. But I think one thing is that I just... wait, can you do me... hold on, just give us a second. Just put that in my pack, please. Okay. Okay, so why does he's invited back anytime he can come back, but understand a couple things. One, that I just rewatched the 3rd interview 3 days ago, from beginning to end, and I was astounded and very pleased at how much I got out of it the 3rd time. I mean, how it held together, the depth of it. And I think you'll find that with this statement as well, that this is very deep stuff. It's very profound. And I think that it repays people viewing it several times. That's the first point. The second point is that we have... I kind of view it like this. We got these interviews out there to a certain extent, but I'll be blunt about it. I mean, there's probably about 8,000 to 10,000 people who've seen it. There's a total of somewhere over 20,000 different views, and the different interviews. The first one has, I don't remember, 14,000. One has 8,000. One has 7,000. But we need to get tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people to see this interview. And that's what we're working on. Understand that Bob Avakian, he's an incredible speaker. And the way he's able to break things down is unparalleled. And with the science, the substance, the humor, the stories, this is an entire sense of, as we've termed it, the heart and soul of the revolution and hardcore for revolution. But we're in a time when we're looking at, as he wrote in Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, that coming up in the 2024 election is a pivotal point in which the future of the country could be decided, including in a fascist direction, or if in fact forces are brought forward where revolution is on the agenda. Right now the choices in front of the vast majority of people in this country are between this fascist, really vicious lunacy that, as I was speaking about, Jordan Neely, and on the other hand, the oppression and exploitation that have been every day. But if you think about this, the next 18 months and what that entails and how precious this leadership is, it's not just pop in the car and come down to the studio and do this. Okay, this is not a minor undertaking, and the risks are not inconsequential, and they're going to increasingly be so. we just put out this statement. It's very blunt and forthright about what we're going to do. The end of that piece, something terrible or something truly emancipating, has a discussion of what kind of approach to a different kind of struggle that we're hoping that if we accumulate the necessary forces who are trained ideologically and politically, that what kind of struggle's going to have to be led. This is somebody who's leading all that is somebody who's in the crosshairs of the dictatorship that we live under. Yes, it's bourgeois democracy, but that is a form of dictatorship. So those are all the kinds of considerations. And as for the RNL show being every day, I want to help. No, I think I would love that. So, but that's a serious question. So how do we do that? One, right now we're doing a weekly show that we break down into individual segments. We've increased our capacity so that for regular watchers of the show, the last couple of shows have involved people producing segments. That they've been doing them themselves. An incredible thing on immigration that Atlas and Federico did. The more we get that process going, we'll be producing short segments throughout the week is a goal we have, of putting them up and then combining them into the show. Right now we go the other way. We put the show together, we do it on one day, and then we break it up. And I will say to people, the reason we break them up is people should be using those, showing the segments to friends. In fact, a key way people are getting into the Bob Avakian interviews is by watching the way we've broken that into more bite-sized pieces, bite-sized being anywhere from 3 to 15 minutes. And as I said, it really pays to watch the whole thing. And here's a suggestion. We are planning to do this in Los Angeles without a Revolution bookstore, but we're going to have a day coming up where we show the whole thing. And we'll start with some, I guess in New York you'd have to start with bagels, but we'd start with, in LA it's a little different, breakfast tacos. But anyway, we're going to start with that. We're going to show the first one, then we're going to have lunch, having some discussion, show the second one, and have some more, food, and people are going to spend the day. And for those of you who've been around Revolution Books for about 15 years, we once showed the wonderful movie La Commune, which is it's something like 9 hours or something ridiculous like that. We spent the entire day into the evening. And for the 20 people who came to it, or 25 people, including myself, it was one of the best days. I mean, I remember that day to this day. I can think of the kinds of conversations and the immersion that we had. So I would suggest we've only begun to tap those interviews. Now, to the last question and the first question, why don't we go after the main enemy, the landlords, and what kind of society are we going to bring into being? That was your question, right? What comes after the revolution? Sir, that's what you... Yeah, right. So maybe I can speak to that. I think we're going to probably get into that quite a bit through the course of this discussion. The society that we're going to bring into being is outlined in this Constitution. And this is an incredible document. There has never been a Constitution in any existing state, any previous socialist or communist, socialist state under the leadership of a communist party, or even in the realm of theory, like this Constitution, that provides for the basic needs of the people, but at the same time provides for and envisions a society filled with ferment, debate, discussion, dissent, and that is on the road to overcoming all the divisions that exist in society. One of the things that Bob Avakian is built on the previous experience of the socialist revolution, particularly in revolutionary China, where the revolution was being fought in the last years of the revolution, the last decade. It was a big fight over would it be a capitalist society or a socialist society. This was known as the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution in China. And, in one sense you could say, unfortunately, Mao Zedong was right, that the, that the stakes were nothing less than that, because after he died, they arrested the revolutionaries. And then, as we see today, China is now an imperialist, a capitalist imperialist country, even though they keep it's being run by the nominally the Communist Party. That's as far from a genuine Communist Party as you could imagine. This Constitution provides a way and a different vision of the process of transforming society, including the fact that, you make a revolution, and a lot of people will be with you when at the time comes and you could actually make a revolution. You got a lot of people with you. You start as a minority, and you'll have to wage a revolutionary struggle against the counter-revolution that will come at you. But once you, but when you win, a lot of people are with you. But then the formerly exploited, the formerly oppressed, they're now in a society that oppression's beginning to be lifted off. But here's the problem. All the legacy of patriarchy, of white supremacy, of the primacy of people who've had the privilege of working with their minds over the people who've only been able to labor. All of those kinds of social relations, and there's more than I've just mentioned, the division between rural and the cities, and that now exists on a world scale. I mean, you go look at your breakfast menu and figure out let alone your dinner menu, how much that comes from Mexico, from Chilean sea bass, from South Asia, your shrimp. Almost all the shrimp that doesn't come from the oil-infested Gulf of Mexico is coming from Thailand. There's a whole process that's going to have to go on to overcome all of these things. And this Constitution, what runs through it is a breakthrough in the new communism developed by Bob Avakian of the concept of solid core and elasticity on the basis of the solid core. So this society will be a dictatorship of the proletariat, meaning not the individual proletarians, but a dictatorship in the interest of the class that has nothing to lose but its chains, as opposed to the dictatorship that we live under today, which is a dictatorship of the capitalist class, which we only have the right to pick which of these oppressors is going to rule us. And there's some limited freedoms that exist in this country, limited by class and race, and also limited by whether or not you stand in opposition to it. There's some old friends here tonight who can tell stories about when they first found themselves in opposition to U.S. government. They found themselves, under the boot, or having the boot of this dictatorship directed right at them. So this is going to be a different kind of dictatorship of the proletarian. Dictatorship, and this is something that's gone into in the interviews. It's not one person banging their shoe on the table, as those of us who are older remember Khrushchev, or one person or one committee's rule. It's the dictatorship in the interests of a class of people. So what comes after is detailed in here, and you look and see just the whole process by which the society will be governed, the way in which the masses will be drawn into participating in the society, and further the actual programmatic aspects. For example, one of the three characteristics of the economy will be that it's ecologically sustainable and moving in that direction. I mentioned, and it's mentioned in the proclamation, that one of the first things we'll do is abolish nuclear weapons because they're inconsistent with the aims of this revolution. A big part of the new communism, maybe you don't know, but I'm going to tell you, the big part of the new communism and of Bob Avakian's work is a radical break from the notion that the first shall be last and the last shall be first, that the ends justify the means. In fact, our means, how we fight, what we struggle for, has to be consistent with what we're fighting for. This is not a revolution for revenge. This is a revolution to emancipate humanity. Now, what about those accursed landlords who keep raising the rent and they don't fix the plumbing and do all these terrible things? And they do terrible things, including because they are I mean, you do have to separate out. There's petty landlords, people who buy a house and they rent out the second floor, and they're under tremendous pressure of regulations, all of this, and themselves are in different ways subject to the vicissitudes of the economy itself. But even the larger, the way the real estate industry, particularly in a place like New York, works, that is a major capitalist institution. It is like the capitalist institutions, not in its exact function, although it actually is one of investment, like the banks, like the auto companies, like Amazon. This is what we're going to overthrow through this revolution. We are working on the biggest problems. We're not just trying to, I know there was that entertaining politician who said, the rents are too damn high, They are too damn high, but we're not just dealing with that. We need to overthrow the system that creates housing as a source of profit for a handful of people, as opposed to, I'm sorry, I sort of lost my place. Housing should be an essential right. The right to eat should be an essential right. The right to health care should be an essential right. All of these in this society are tied to, tethered to, inextricably to the accumulation of capital by this class of people in whose interest this system runs. So the biggest problem we face is not just the landlords, not just the for-profit hospitals, for-profit prisons, all this kind of stuff. It's the system of capitalism, imperialism that needs to be overthrown, and that's driving us to environmental devastation and driving us potentially towards an all-out war between nuclear-armed powers, each of whom are driven by the commandment of expand or die in a dog-eat-dog system. So if that, I think in some broad strokes, a basic answer to that question. So other questions? Other people? Yeah.
I watched the show this week, and I thought that Lenny Wolf's rundown was so clear and positive, and I think that kind of message which the REVCOMs have been trying to do over and over again, seeing what happened with Rise Up for abortion rights, seeing how the left attacked them because it was the RCP that was behind it. And yet, they were the first. Rise Up was the first group that was in the streets, and we seem to not be able to do what the rest of the world seems able to do, which is get people into the streets. And it's something I think about a lot. How do we get people into the streets here? The woke tour and the questions that were asked about pronouns, and the young people have been so seduced with the queer theory sort of academics and this kind of thing, a new language, words that don't mean anything or mean the opposite of what they used to mean, and the left participates in that, not just the right. And so I think that that's a real challenge, and that we have to speak directly to those issues and not be polite and be willing to provoke, because the seduction is so extreme and people are not thinking through what it actually means. And I'm just using the pronouns because I think most people can understand it at that level. Respecting the civil rights of every individual is a commitment that I heard on the show yesterday. Trans people, for example, the civil rights issue is something that I would stand up for, but a lot of the madness that goes around that, which divides people and separates people and makes people feel that that's the only issue that they want to talk about. I mean, I think each of us certainly for myself, I struggle with how do I talk to someone that's going to disagree with me from the get-go, and it's usually around a issue, a single issue. It may be gender, it may be this, the war in Ukraine, etc. And I think we need to provoke. We need to speak the truth that BA puts forward in a way which is clear. But it's Andy, I just think it's a huge problem right now because of social media, the mainstream media. People think that MSNBC is the progressive channel to listen to, pro-war. We can laugh at that, but look at the reality of that. Tucker Carlson going to be on Twitter with Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, supporting that kind of... It's a very dangerous time. And I think that I want to hear more people speak up about how do we confront this very dangerous time and not laugh because we think it's madness or stupid or whatever. It's very, very real, this woke culture.
Yeah, this is very important. And this is something that the REVCOMs have only begun to really learn what Bob Avakian has been fighting for some time, which is that we have to struggle very sharply and fiercely and tenaciously against everything that in the thinking of people that holds them back from understanding what the problem is that they face and what is the solution. And I'm going to come back to that. But the fact that there is this insanity, this lunacy of what people are preoccupied with. I'm looking for a safe space in a moment when these motherfuckers are preparing for a nuclear war. And the same people who ask for safe space turn their backs on the fact and may even think they'll wear their little Ukraine button. Not thinking about what's actually going on because everybody's looking into the mirror of their cell phone and the mirror of themselves. And see, this is something that happens, and it's not the first time in a period like this where people have become into a form of madness and self-obsession. For people who studied some Marxism, and after the 1905 revolution in Russia failed, people got into all kinds of things, putting freckle cream on, which I could use some, but to get rid of the spots instead of dealing with, it was a metaphor though, for not dealing with the actual problem. And that's what this woke lunacy is all about. And it stands in direct opposition to an actual revolution, and it stands in direct opposition to understanding the world objectively and scientifically. And let me just start right here by saying, if you happen to be coming to Los Angeles, on Wednesday the 24th, Sunsara Taylor and Rafael Caderas. Sunsara is the co-host of the Revolution Nothing Less show, and Rafael's a regular contributor. He's a fiery fellow, and he does some very sharp agitation on the show. They're going to be doing a program on the woke lunacy versus real revolution, liberating revolution. Now, that speech will be a special broadcast of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show 2 days later, on the Friday the 26th of May. So for those of you who are waiting on Thursday night, you're going to have to wait an extra day, but we're going to have to process that material, and we're going to put that up because it is very important. And our hope is that people in this room, some of you from Columbia University, some maybe from some high schools or other colleges, City College, will invite them to your campus to come in the fall and speak. And we want to take this tour out there because, as Jim just pointed out, this is really crippling people. And it's infuriating, and it's also really upsetting. Because here's two things. The world is going to hell very, very fast. The stakes are enormously high. And this nonsense is being peddled to young people who should be in the streets, who should be in the revolution, whether they're in the streets or not. They should be in the revolution. There's some people who can't take to the streets, but they should be in the revolution. They should be analyzing what's the problem and what's the solution, and stop playing in a sandbox here, which is all this stuff is. You know, I began by saying this is something the REVCOMS have had to really come to grips with. In Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, which Bob Avakian wrote or was published in December of 2021, a big chunk of that is about taking this on. And I'll be frank, we're only now getting out in a major way on it. We've taken it on in bits and pieces, and part of why Rise Up for Abortion Rights got attacked is fundamentally because the major movements of around reproductive health care, reproductive rights, have been dominated by the Democratic Party. But also there were lots of other groups who are of the woke left who abhor revolution and whose sights are so lowered that you have this internet culture, where a cancel culture, where simply an accusation is conviction of guilt. And this is discussed in the interviews quite a bit by Bob Avakian. And this is a terrible situation. Imagine, and they do this in the name of being democratic. Imagine a society run by these people where an accusation is as good as guilt. An accusation is a form of evidence. Somebody makes an accusation, particularly a woman who said she's been battered or abused, or a trans person or a gay person, a black person, and say, I've suffered some aggression. Well, okay, assault, verbal assault, which is actually technically a legal assault as well, just by the way. That should be listened to very carefully, but it's just a part of the evidence. It still has to be proven. But yet the culture is one of canceling people. And Avakian talks about this in the interviews we did. He gives an example at one point of a letter that we received, a report that he got of a black gay man who said, as a black gay man, the only power I have is to cancel people. And he says, that's just so wrong. By yourself, you may not have any power, but together with others, just as your point on getting in the streets, together in a movement for an actual revolution, you have a lot of power. We actually have, we could defeat these people. We could defeat these people in an actual struggle for a revolution, not as we are now, not with the few REVCOMs we have, but we could. There's a way to go to work on this, but one part of that way is not allowing people to sit with this poisonous way of thinking, this, another expression of this is, you have your truth, I have my truth. No. There's one reality. You have your experience, I have a different experience. Let's share that experience to better understand the one reality we both face. But there's not two different realities. There's one reality, one truth, and this is why it's so dangerous to say, I believe all women. I follow only, well, I don't know where it stops, but black, trans, maybe it's Native, probably should be Native American trans people, because they're even more oppressed. And that gets you down to where does it even end? It gets you nowhere in terms of the kind of unity, principled unity we need to build to be able to stand up to the attacks today, which is part of the strategy for revolution. Fight the power and transform the people for revolution. We cannot allow what happened to Jordan Neely to happen. I was going to say this, anybody who's a REVCOM or aspiring REVCOM, you're in that subway car, you intervene. And yeah, maybe that Marine comes after you. Enough. I mean, it's fine that people video this on their cell phones, but that's not sufficient. We have to stand up and not allow these people to get away with this, including the police. Now, there's strategy, there's a lot of tactical, a lot of doing this the right way. We're working on that. But the decisive element of preparing for revolution is the middle part of that strategic approach, which is all in this third column here, fight the power and transform the people for revolution, is transforming the thinking of people, because people right now are not thinking that the problem is actually the system. They don't fully understand that. They see a part of it, just like the brother said, correctly so. These real estate landlords, it's infuriating to think of people living on the goddamn street with all, and then the New York Times and Wall Street Journal reporting every week that there's all these empty office buildings, and it would be very difficult to transform those into housing. Yes, it would be difficult, okay? I happen to know a bit about architecture. It'd be difficult, but if you can do it, you've sent over more money every week to Ukraine. You could fix that. You could provide people with housing, but you don't do it because it's not profitable. The same reason that people have no health care, or very bad health care. People walk into a clinic and they say, "Oh my God, look what's wrong with you. You need a CAT scan or an MRI." Well, let's see, it's May 16th. We get you in there in August. At that point, that whatever was a small growth might be a deadly tumor that's metastasized. So this is a whole system we're up against. But people, if they're only looking at that little small picture that is represented by the woke, let alone just the ridiculousness of it. Now look, Sansara and Raf, they've been working on this. They're going to give a really great speech. I'm just vamping on this thing right now, but I think these are important points, and I just really want to underline what Jim said. If we don't get out and struggle with people, what I'm talking about will never happen. You want to know how to do it? Watch the interviews. Read the statement. Read Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating. It's in there. In 2020, Bob Avakian wrote something like 100 articles. Week after week, he was writing. It was during the beautiful rising or after the brutal police murder of George Floyd, when people didn't have their eye on the prize. And then he wrote more last year at this time as the struggle over could we actually prevent the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which stripped away, was just the first step in stripping away the right to abortion from people. This is, we got attacked here, but he was also then saying you've got to take on all this lunacy. So I've been going on a bit on this question, but I think it's so important, and we have a very important speech that's coming up in just whatever it is now, 11 days, 12 days, and then we're going to have it on the show on Friday the 26th. So some more questions. Yes, the sister right here.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about the whole woke culture thing that we've been talking about for a bit now. And I've been thinking about the concept of how a lot of the times leftists will talk about all-inclusive language in order to go for whatever they want to go for. See, I don't know if effective all-inclusive language exists. I genuinely don't know. I was just wondering, do you think effective all-inclusive language exists yourself, or?
Well, let me put that back to you. How have you seen that come up? Experienced it in your your life.
Okay, this might be a little bit controversial, but here we go. So.
Well, this is the right place for controversial.
Okay.
He just gave a speech about it.
Goody gumdrops. All right, good to know. So, yeah, okay, so as a queer person, I've been to lots of different queer clubs all throughout my life. And so a lot of the times there are going to be like some trans people who have some kind of discourse of what's the proper way to address a crowd. Some trans people have a huge problem with you can't use the phrase "you guys" because then you're just saying you're just talking to the guys, or you're not even including the trans people who are maybe feminine identifying who might find that language triggering. And honestly, if I look at the roots to that language, they weren't really thinking about excluding everybody who's not masculine, I don't think. But it's like, oh, well, these are my feelings, and now you have to oblige by them. And it's like, I don't know about that. So, yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, I do. But does anybody else want to speak to that? People who've particularly been on the campuses or in these communities? Yeah, well, I'm going to come back to Jim. I want to get more of a conversation.
You know, it's interesting to hear this about you guys. Because if you were familiar with lesbian culture, I heard over and over again, hey guys, what are we going to do tonight? But it wasn't it wasn't gender specific. It was just a way to claim the language with a sense of humor. It is so dead serious now. And to me, the language question, I try to be respectful. You know, it's not. I'm not going to fight over whether I say she or he. I will try to do what is appropriate in the moment because there's a larger principle that I'm trying to put forward. And principles of unity, which is what I try to talk about. You know, I want to stand with Rise Up for Abortion Rights. I stood with people that I didn't agree with all their politics. But I agree we all were there for one reason, that women can control their bodies. And I, as a gay man, understood why that was important to me, that I have to control my body too. Trans people have to control their body too. Poor people have to have the right to be able to control their body. Just talking that way rather than arguing over she, they, and there are some gender-neutral pronouns, but they're not in common use. It's so tied in to the binary. And if you really want to free yourself of the binary, make sure you're not letting it seep into the dialogue that goes on. The she, he, they, whatever, to me, is the triumph of the binary right there. The gender-neutral, which I will provide to anyone who wants to see them, MX is the one you'll sometimes see listed, which you can check off. But that isn't the most important thing to me. Respecting a person's right to feel that that's the most important thing to them, I'm not going to fight over that. I'm going to fight over what's behind that, you know? So the question about gender neutral, and if you're a trans person, rather than an ally, you should really listen to the political trans person who is not single issue. And I will tell you, my experience has been that's not the biggest fight for them. That's not the biggest fight for them, the pronoun. It's what we live in, the capitalist society, the people that are profiting over the whole trans movement, all the medical care that goes into it, all the money that it costs to do this and that to your body. All of that is petty bourgeois capitalism. Is probably a better word for it than petty bourgeois, and you'll tell me, Andy. But think about, those are the things that concern me. And I would never disrespect a choice that any person makes about their body. I may not understand it, I may not like it, but I would never disrespect it because that person is trying to feel some dignity about themselves. Move on to the things that are in this "We Are the REVCOMS" statement. You know, I could go on and I won't go on about this. And people can disagree in this room tonight, too.
Well, people have to, you know, how we're going to forge the kind of unity that's needed to overthrow this monster of a system that oppresses people on the basis of class, race, nationality, gender, sex, all of this. There's going to be a lot of struggle. When I said that the new society envisioned by Bob Avakian in its Constitution is one of solid core with a lot of elasticity on the basis of that solid core, there's going to be a lot of struggle under socialism. That's going to be the good part about one of the greatest parts of it is the ferment in society to try to get at the truth and to win people to be able to understand what is the source of their oppression. What do we have to do to uproot it? These are big questions, but as long as you are looking only in the mirror of yourself, you're not going to solve this. And of course, the tragedy of all this is that people have turned inward and turned away from that source of people, that source of struggle. I remember when Matthew Shepard was killed. The way that night, man, the streets were packed in New York, and it was fierce. It was inspiring, and all kinds of people were standing together, including a lot of youth who never actually, because I talked to a lot of people late that night out on the street, I think in Madison Square or something, who never actually really thought about gay or lesbian, let alone queer, what any of that meant. But they were out there fighting because they saw this as related to the struggle against oppression. And a lot of people learned from that struggle. But now, you can't participate in the struggle. You're just an ally. You're just an ally. Fuck that. There's, just look at the pictures of the George Floyd rising. Some people were upset. Oh, there's too many white people here. Oh, it's a terrible thing that white people are fighting against the racist police murder. Is it? Really? Or isn't the problem that too few white people have actually fought against racial oppression? That's actually been the problem in this country. That's the big problem. Does that mean that there shouldn't be black people in the struggle? Of course not. Does it mean there shouldn't be? Let's listen to what people say. The most important thing is the content of the leadership, not who they are, what their background is. It doesn't mean if you come from a group that's oppressed in various ways, if you've experienced that oppression yourself, you have a lot of experience and insight that you can bring. But you don't necessarily know the cause of it. That requires science. That requires getting beneath the surface to understand what gives rise to this. Why is it that this system can't be reformed? Why, 3 years after George Floyd was murdered, just about 3 years, right? When there was the defund the police, we're going to abolish the police, we're going to, all these kinds of petty bourgeois. Yes, they were petty bourgeois solutions. They were like, they weren't looking at the underlying class relations of this. So you have, as I said, on May 1st, and you can watch the speech on the show a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think, you had Biden and Kamala Harris putting on the kente cloth, got that nice orange cloth with the red and green and black, and they're taking a knee in the Capitol and saying Black Lives Matter. Some of them had their fists in the air, these Democratic politicians. And then just 2 years later, Biden's saying, fund the police, fund the police, fund the police. Why is that? Because it was a ridiculous demand. This abolition bullshit from Angela Davis. Come on now, let's get serious. You're not going to abolish prisons in this society. In fact, in the new society, there's going to be a need for prisons for a while. They're going to be dramatically different than prisons here. They're going to be about actual rehabilitation. They're going to be about moving people back into society. But there'll be people who are going to commit crimes in the beginning because they're coming out of this society. And it's in their heads, and it's going to take some time to overcome all that. And so we're going to move to a whole different way of dealing with crime, and the need for crime won't be the same because people will have enough to live. Because it'll be a society where the basic needs of people will be met. And yes, in the beginning years, it'll probably be some hardship because we're not going to be able to have all these goodies from around the world that are based on exploitation and oppression. We will have to figure out how to do the cell phones without children up to their fucking waists at 8 years old digging coltan out of the mines of Uganda. Actually, not Uganda, sorry, of the Congo and Rwanda. So and there's other precious metals that come from the Congo. We can't live off of the rest of humanity. They're human beings too. There's nothing more special about American lives. I'm going afield here, but it's very much related to what both of you are raising. Where we can be. People say I want to be called they instead of she or he. Fine, I'll do that. That's not a big deal. But if you're going to say then in saying that we're not going to actually get down on the larger questions and overthrowing the system that gives rise to oppression on the basis of gender and sexual orientation. That's a big problem. And if you're not going to analyze reality correctly, because Jim was mentioning Rise Up for Abortion Rights, and while there was just absolutely vicious attacks against Bob Avakian and Sansara Taylor, the co-host of the R&L show, one aspect of this attack was that we said that that taking away the right to abortion is female enslavement. I don't think I have the slogan right exactly now. Female enslavement. Oh, no, you can't. Forced motherhood is female enslavement. Sorry, thank you. And that this was an attack aimed at women, principally. This is, you make an analysis of the situation, and, you know, and those of us who were around in the late 70s knew that a big part of the strategy of this fascist movement was to go after abortion rights as part of a Christian fascist, a Christian fundamentalist agenda to subordinate women. The children to the mother to the husband, and the husband to Christ. This was, and that women should be, it was a response to the integration of women and more into society as a whole, and it was principally aimed at women. Are those people with uteruses who identify in a different way, should they have the right to abortion? Of course, we said that from the very beginning of that campaign, but this was part of a very, very concerted attack on women. But now that's eliminated. Every one of the ACLU took women out of its publicity. Every abortion rights thing took women out of its publicity. I was looking something up for a friend on the Cleveland Clinic website, and which is a respected health hospital, and I couldn't find the word women in it. It was people with uteruses, which, if you think about it, think about reducing women to their body parts. Chest feeders. This is another. I mean, this is like, are you fucking kidding me? It would be funny if it wasn't so dangerous to the kind of political movement that is required, the kind of unity that's needed, the kind of analysis of what is the problem and what is the solution. So I think we're, just to speak to the sister's question, you know, and I hope I said that, you know, was right in saying that, but I think that
and we really have to talk to each other personally.
Yeah.
It's really these kinds of questions have to be talked among people that may not agree, that may not agree, but respectfully have the conversation, because
I think the mic might, wait, Jim, I think the mic might not be on.
We can learn from each other if we have the conversation, respectfully listening to each other and hearing the humanity of the other who I may disagree with, finding that space. That's how we build, for me, that's how I want to build revolution. And I think that that's what Bob Avakian is talking about. The humanity that is in revolution, that is not lost because of the violent culture we live in.
I think that's important, and we've written some articles on this, but the kind of lack of respect and the inhumanity of what was directed at all the activists who took part in Rise Up, and especially against Bob Avakian and Sansara, it was vile, it was vicious, it included literal threats against people's lives, and that's not anything that we can count, that we can accept, and that's not how we have to deal with this. I do think it requires, in the public square, some sharp agitation at times, and your first point about we have to be provocative, we have to be challenging people. I think too often, it's going to want to come back to the REVCOMs here in the room, and the first thing we do is try to find the common point of unity. Yeah, we're for this, you're for that, and oh yeah, but I don't quite agree with that, but it's okay as long as we're all together, kumbaya, and that didn't actually cut it. That does mean, it just didn't cut it because you weren't actually getting right to the heart of the matter. And one of the things I think about this statement, and I think some people probably wonder, well, Why do you start it that way? We are the REVCOMS. Isn't that kind of are you because, what you putting yourselves forward? Yes, we are. I said this is a nascent vanguard force. There's no revolution without a vanguard force, and we don't hide anything about this. We're a small force at this point. We need to become big. And the way we're going to do that is by asserting what this is about, reaching out to people, and that whole first inviting part of this means that there's a lot of people need to do it. Then there's a conversation that has to happen. And that conversation has to increasingly be societal. It has to be individual, but it has to be also stirring the air. Jim who's been speaking to you, Jim Ferrat, was an early member of ACT UP. And, in the early days, they offended a lot of people. But it woke up a society that was not just indifferent, but indifference that was killing people. And it had to be woken up. You had to be sharp. And we ourselves, I'll just say, at that time had to be like, whoa, this requires rethinking some long-standing assumptions that people had in our movement. And we did. Okay, but it wouldn't have happened without the bold actions that people took that were offensive, but they in the main, in terms of publicly, were directed with an attempt to unite people. I know within some of the ACT UP meetings it got pretty heated, but it was mainly in the correct direction, where people were struggling as if the future was at stake, and it was, because a lot of people were lost in that epidemic of AIDS in the early years. So let me see if there's some more questions. A fellow in the green hat had his hand up before, but do you?
Yes, I was telling you that. I was telling you that earlier that I've been around so long with the political movement. Mm-hmm. I know a lot about revolution, but I'm from Haiti. But last week, I met a young man that was beaten up in the store. They were up to his neck. I say, stop. He told me, why you have to stop? I say, stop, otherwise I boycott the store till you lose every single dollar you have. He said, what? I said, you understand English? He said, oh, you took my candy. I said, candy? You want to kill the poor kid? And I called the ambulance, sent to the hospital. I say, if I see you're doing the same thing again, you remember when the fruit market and the vegetable was beating up a young lady? I boycott this place. I'll make sure you lose that store, never open back. And something I said to him, and the guy said, what? I said, yeah, what? I'm not going to provide that you're killing, you're hurting either black, white, or purple. I say, I need your guys to handle it different way. And the cop will say, I said to the cop right there, listen, tell your president, stop sending money for the weapon back to my country. That's the only thing I want to tell you. Stop sending money. Stop kidnapping I have my cousins got killed by kidnapping. They kidnapping my cousin and his son, and they molested my niece, my little niece. And when they asked $150,000 apiece, my brother told, no, we don't have that much money. And he told me, okay. About 2 days after, they killed him. They threw him in the ravine, killed him in the head. That's why the 18th, we're going to have a march to UN from Grand Army Plaza down to UN. We're going to be in UN too. We're going to tell UN that tell your president stop sending a weapon to our country. Because he sent the country send the money to our country, to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister give the weapon to the kidnapping. So they're making a lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you. People understand, I think, that you're speaking about Haiti and the struggle going on there, where the country has been literally destroyed by imperialism and over centuries, starting with the French extorting the country for decades and decades, and then the U.S. invading. Somebody whose memory is a little better. How many times did the U.S. occupy Haiti? Many. 3 times, I think. 3 times, and once for at least 4. Okay. 5 times. Okay. Well, actually, on May 1st, we had a lot of, in Los Angeles. I think some of it was on the show. We had a little quiz from the truck of how many times the U.S. has invaded the Caribbean and Latin American and South American countries, and my compadre on the R&L show Atlas, did this, and it was very, very powerful. And in the very beginning, around one country, it wasn't Haiti. He asked hold up your hand, how many fingers, and then he said it was a trick question because there were more than 5 invasions. And we got to Panama, and it turned out, I think it was like 23 invasions. So there hasn't been a year in the history of this country when they haven't invaded, occupied, staged a coup in some country around the world. And then they have the nerve, the Biden administration has the nerve, the fascists have the nerve to say these people who are coming here for political asylum are invading our country. They talk about a glaring contradiction. And see, this is why this revolution is about something broader than just the landlords who oppress us and people in this country. Because all of that is based on this exploitation of people all around the world. And that actually enables the way of life here, even of the poorest people in this country. Brother was just speaking about the kidnapping of your niece. Was it, or your niece? I don't know the exact number, but there's a huge number of people living now in the essentially in the open air in Port-au-Prince. Even the projects here, which are no picnic, but there's still a room in most apartments where you can turn a knob and get fresh water. There's still a room where if you have to defecate, it's going to get its way out to a sewage plant and get purified. That is not the condition of millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of people in the world. 350 million children are in child labor every year. You don't have a cell phone without that. So this is a revolution to emancipate all of humanity. And the first step in this is seizing power in this country. But to do that, we've got to get organized. We've got to get serious. We can't have people playing around saying, you don't respect my pronouns. You shouldn't be in this fight. You have to follow me because I'm looking for safe space. I've been triggered. Look, nobody should have to put up with a microaggression. And this is, I think, part of, if I speak to what Jim said. We have to talk to people. People say some shit to somebody and you overhearing it that's degrading a woman or a trans person, a gay person or a Jewish person or black person or whatever. Speak up. This is not right. People shouldn't have to suffer microaggressions. But there's big aggression going on in the world right now that's fueling this microaggression. And this microaggression, I'm going to say this politely, obsession is actually leading people away from seeing what the actual source of the problem is and acting on that source. This is why there aren't people in the street. I mean, it turned out in the immediate sense there's not an enormous crisis on the border, but there still should have been thousands and thousands of people protesting around the lifting of Title 42, and when mifepristone, the drug that enables 60% of the women who get abortions was been sitting in the docket. Where's the protest? come on, this is people being focused on the wrong questions and not understanding the necessity that we face. So let me continue to see if there's more comments, questions. I thank you though for bringing that point of view from Haiti into this, and we should get information from Revolution Books on the protest at the United Nations, and it would be good if somebody here wants to volunteer to go that and take some video footage of it and share it with the RNL show, and we'll see whether we use it right away or whenever. That'd be important. Do some interviews with people. At one point, there was actually, in fact, I can remember when I first came to New York in the early 80s, there was a very vibrant, small but very vibrant revolutionary communist movement among the Haitians. And that needs to be revived now with the new communism, because this is one of the outrages of the history of this country and of all of Europe. That was the first slave rebellion, the first independent black republic, all of the Toussaint Louverture, and then they had to pay. Then the reparations from that. The legacy of that is why, if you look from the air at that island, you can see the verdant side, the green side of the Dominican Republic, and the barren earth of Haiti. This is not anything a climate issue. This is not an issue of the people. This is an issue of imperialism, straight up, and that's what has to be overthrown. Anybody else? Well, Kevin. I'm just going to introduce you since you're... This is Kevin. For those of you who don't know him, he's one of the staff members here at Revolution Books, and you should get to know him about revolutionary politics, and if you're really good, ask him about jazz.
Whether you're good or not, ask me about jazz.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And actually, Miles said it was only two types of music, good and bad, so
right. Okay.
There we go. No, I wanted to share, I'm one with the team also that's going out to share this statement with people on the bottom of society who catch the most hell under this system. We've gone out in this neighborhood and particularly nearby housing projects, and I wanted to invite people to join us to take this out. And also go back to something Andy was talking about earlier, the need to struggle and fight with people, because one of the things that we found almost right away is how people react to and respond, particularly in that first part of the statement where it says people who are anguishing about where things are headed, and if you're youth, you have no future at all under the system, if there's even a future for anybody. And they're really, really, really torn up about the violence among the people, as much as what's happening with the police in and out of uniform. And folks are like, what's with the youth? They don't have any respect and stuff. And first thing you hear is people talking about how the youth are killing each other, how they don't need to be doing that and they need to be doing something right. But then this thing happened with Jordan Neely, and that struck people real hard. And one of the things about the youth, it seems like one of our experiences, that a lot of people have turned away from this or think that there's something about what they're doing or how they can just avoid this. We really do have to go out and struggle with people to take this up. And that's one of the things, people think that they can just escape this or find some way out of this, or it's not going to happen to me. That's a big deal. I just want to leave it with that, because and really encourage people to go out here with us and take this everywhere. Because without these youth, there's not going to be this revolution. And it's an elephant in the room that the very people who are victimized by this this way are not in the streets, are not taking this up. It's not like when everybody was some kind of Black Panther. We have to change this shit, and people have got to get with it. That's all.
Well, I think one thing is people should want to join in that team, and I'm sure it's be very interesting to go out with them. One thing also I want to say to people, there's a lot of ways to distribute literature. Leaving them in laundromats, putting them up on bulletin boards in schools. If you're not quite ready to talk to people, there's ways to actually get this up on the walls, and I think that's very important. And you can't, look, a big part of the strategy for revolution in this rare time is recognizing that people are going to face, have already faced, and are going to face one rupture in the way that they've been living and expected to live after another. I mean, last year at this time, if you were in many parts of this country and you were pregnant and and for whatever reason needed to get an abortion, often there was onerous things in the way, but you could get an abortion. Now you can't. And there was all this stuff that the movement that Jim was speaking about that stood in the way of really getting millions in the streets. Said, "Oh, don't worry, we're going to transport people to New York and all this." Well, they have transported a few people, but the clinics are overwhelmed. In the main way that they provide abortions are with mifepristone. That's hanging in the balance right now. It's allowed again, but they're moving after that. There's ballot initiatives where things are the whole process is being stacked. This is a serious business that's coming to a head, the drive towards a fascist regime, whether it's Trump or DeSantis or some other Nazi. On the other hand, the Democrats have no answer to this but the potential of war and carrying out the same policies. Why? Because they're hypocrites? Well, a lot of them are, but that's not the essence of it. The essence of it is that they face a lot of necessity. They can't, under this system, provide for the jobs for the people coming and a way of life for all these refugees that they've created the conditions in their country for them to come. They can't provide for that. So they have to do this thing. The same thing with the police. That's why it was just it's an idiotic, really stupid, diverting demand. We're going to abolish the police. You're not going to abolish the police under this system. Avakian makes the point. The people who will laugh the loudest at you and scream the hardest are going to be people in the black community itself who understand that the conditions of this society generates a lot of crime. And people are victims of it. That's the double jeopardy of it. It's the horror of it. For years, I know Carl and myself and others in this room, we've heard the stories of the parents of mentally ill husbands, wives, children, call the mothers, Eleanor Bumpers, come, call the police because there's no mental health services. You don't know whether to call the police or not call the police. Persons might kill themselves, but then the police come and do it for them. That's a history of this all over this country. That's the nature of this system. I want to read one thing from Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating that captures some of what we've been talking about, and then I want to invite Molly up to give a fundraising pitch, and while I'm doing this and she's doing that, if you still have a question, we can take one more. I want to wrap this up by 9 o'clock, another 15 minutes or so, but Bob Avakian writes in here that it is the responsibility of everyone who recognizes the profound need for revolution and the rare possibility in a time like this to actually make revolution, to wage a tireless and at times fierce struggle to win more and more people to make a radical rupture with the confining and degrading terms of this system, and to take up and act on the revolutionary orientation and motivation that is put forward. Here it says in the Declaration and Call, but now in We Are the REVCOMS. And then he writes, instead of staying in your lane and going for self while the system is moving to even more decisively crush any hope for a world worth living in, people need to be looking for a world, people need to be looking at the bigger picture, focusing on the greater interests of humanity and the possibility for a far better world, and acting to make this a reality. Instead of finding excuses to go along with the way things have been, standing apart from, or even bad-mouthing the revolution, people need to get with this revolution and not throw away the rare opportunity to be part of bringing something much better into being. Instead of lashing out with individual acts of frustration, which brother just spoke about, people shooting each other. Instead of lashing out with individual acts of frustration or attempts to take on this system in small, isolated ways, with small, isolated forces that have no chance of succeeding, people need to pour their anger and their hatred for injustice into building a movement of millions that could have a real chance to defeat the system and make a real revolution. Instead of fighting and killing each other, what people need to be doing now is uniting to defend each other. opposing all unjust violence, not launching attacks on anyone, but at the same time not allowing the police or civilian fascist thugs to wantonly brutalize or murder people. And people need to do this as part of building up the forces for revolution. I give you the situation with Jordan Neely. Instead of snarking and sniping at each other and being divided by identities, people should be working to unite everyone from every part of society who can be united in the fight against oppression and injustice, with the goal of putting an end to this system that is the source of this oppression and injustice. And this is going to be very important as the campaign gets underway. Instead of being a tail on the Democratic donkey with its attempt to keep this monstrous system going and to deal with the growing fascist danger by relying on the normal procedures of this system and doom efforts to heal the divisions that are deepening every day, people need to work for the revolution that is urgently needed and deal with the fascist danger as part of doing that. So we have to break with all the individualism, the going for self that is reflected in this wokeism, concentrated in it, the relativism. Oh, my truth, your truth. No, it's just this one reality and we got to change it, or it's going to change the world in ways, if they don't, that are unimaginable. You know, it can happen here. It is happening here, and we have to stop it. And not only is there the danger of fascism, but even more overriding or alongside that is the danger of nuclear war, of the devastation of the climate. And yet all this stands arrayed against the possibility, the potential to do something that would really matter, to fight for something that would really make a difference, overthrowing this system. It seems on the surface, understandably, impossible. They're very powerful. People are into all kinds of bullshit. People have all kinds of toys that they have to distract them. There's all the weapons of mass distraction. But the world is changing. The world is changing. Things are shifting. And there's a possibility that we're already beginning to see where what's held this country together, the center of the society, the agreement among the ruling classes is falling apart. It's fraying. People's lives are going to be jolted. If in that situation there is a force, at first of hundreds and thousands, that's standing up for revolution, uniting with the people in struggle, but standing up for revolution first, not just uniting with people in struggle and then saying, oh, by the way, I think we really need a revolution. We've tried that. That experiment has been run. Okay? And now there's the data to come to a different conclusion. And there's a situation where what we're talking about is possible, which wasn't possible before, and it may not be possible again if we don't actually seize on this moment. And then we need to do it smart. There has to be strategy. This is what Avakian is working on. He's working and developed the first outlines of a strategy that you can read about at this point, and we're still working on this. We need more people to work on the strategic aspect of this now, of how these people could actually be defeated. That's a very important big question, or everything I'm talking about is just, a pie in the sky. They can be defeated. There's ways in which their forces can be split. One of the things that this great divide at the top of society means all the institutions are going to split. But in that split, is it going to just be between those who want to uphold the norms and those who want to shatter the norms for a fascist America? Or is that split going to also be where some of that goes to the revolution? And do you have people who a trained force of revolution who understands what the problem is, what the solution is, how to go about it, when to be on why you have to be on the defensive for a long period of time, and when that moment would be when you could go on the offensive, which is not going to be for a long time, not for a long time, decades, but for a time you'll be on the defensive. A lot of this is discussed. There's the beginning of doctrine on this. This is part of what Avakian works on and is called on others of us to work on. I mean, it's in this talk. I'm not speaking out of school here. It's right in the concluding pages of this document, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating. So instead of all this bullshit get with the revolution and bring your hardest questions too. And to those who are, part of the staff of the store, part of the REVCOMs, if you can't answer a question, guess what? You've got, one, a lot of the answers are already written. Number two, what there aren't answers for, we have a method and approach to be able to figure out those answers. So just because we don't know the answer doesn't mean, therefore, you don't speak to somebody or engage their questions or say, but you should just get with us and come out next Friday. No, let's engage those questions here. And then, yes, come out on Friday or whatever day we're doing something. And if people can't come out, let's find the ways they can take it up, in their job or school, whatever the constraint is. So I want to bring Molly up, who's going to do a fundraising pitch, and, maybe we'll leave it at that. We can see. Okay, Molly, you need to come over here.
Okay.
And I will pick up everything I just dropped.
Okay. Good. Okay, so this is week 2 of the $100,000 Summer Solstice Fund Drive for the Movement for Revolution. And we're going to be asking people to donate generously tonight. But first I want to talk about what happened on May 1st this year. 2 significant things happened. The first one was very, very good. A determined revolutionary force stepped off into the streets around the country, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in San Francisco, and here in New York City. And there's a number of people in this room who were part of that. And we all stepped off with this proclamation that Andy's been talking about, that we are the REVCOMS, declaring that we are putting revolution on the map in 2023, and this was the first step in doing that. But on May 1st, there was also the tragedy that Andy and others have been talking about, that Jordan Neely, a homeless street artist, was callously murdered in the subway, choked from behind by Daniel Penny, a Marine trained to kill by the U.S. military. That was horrific enough. But another heartbreaking thing happened, which has also been mentioned, that nobody in that subway car came to his rescue. There's somebody at the Revolution Books event last week said, we had an event about this murder, they put it in a very real way, we are all on that subway car with Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny. And there are 2 choices, and this is what Andy's been talking about, that we have to, each of us, make a decision. There's 2 futures at this moment in history, on this planet, in this country, and we have to decide what future we're going to fight for. Are we going to sit by and allow and therefore contribute to the something terrible, the future that people have been talking about, the horrors that have been going down? Or are people going to step forward and make a decision to be part of fighting for the different future, the truly emancipating future? And part of doing that is donating funds to make sure that this revolution can get the word out and to can organize people into this revolution. And when you donate to this revolution, you're taking part by taking this word of the revolution to hundreds and thousands of people through taking out the proclamation, so that when people confront the horrors that are unfolding day by day at breakneck speed in this country, they will have a chance to learn about this revolutionary force that they could be a part of, which is organizing the way out of this madness. And they will get a way to understand why this is happening, understanding the science, the leadership that Bob Avakian is providing. And when you make donations, you're supporting things like the tour that Sansara Taylor is doing, the speaking tour, Woke Lunacy versus Real Revolution, taking on the dead end and extremely harmful wokeism, which we've been talking about, how devastating it is, which infects and infests our whole society. And read her letter explaining what this tour is doing and why. And if you would want to donate specifically to this, there's a way to do it here. And when you make this donation, You're supporting the revolutionary force that is out there struggling with the youth who have no future, as Kevin was talking about, to get into this revolution and to get out of what they're doing. You're supporting a force that is fighting for a different morality and standing up against the fascists and standing with the immigrants on the border, standing with the immigrants on the buses, standing with the immigrants who are in the shelters and on the streets of New York City and across the country, as part of building for the revolution that is absolutely needed in order to get rid of the conditions that give rise to this. You're supporting and part of a force across this country which stands with the people of the world. You're from Haiti to Iran, from Congo to Venezuela, and all across the world. You're standing with a force that we are the REVCOMS, led by Bob Avakian, to support with your generous donations. These funds will enable the word of the revolution to get out broadly through getting out the proclamation in tens of thousands. You're supporting the website, revcom.us, and the RNL show, which provide leadership and guidance across the country, and to spread the leadership of Bob Avakian and the new communism. And raising funds is part of the building networks of support that are so needed now and under the conditions that Andy was talking about in the future. You're learning more more and more about this revolution as you're taking it out. And all of this is heightened in this moment, in this rare time, when revolution is actually more possible. So, the people are passing the baskets around, but I also want people to take this donation flyer out of their packet and get their phones out and go to the QR code and donate generously. Put the cash in the bucket, that's great. But you can also donate more generously than what you happen to have in your pocket when you go to the QR code. If you can, this campaign is aiming for $100,000 in just a few weeks to make all of the things that we're talking about possible. If you can give $5 or $500, all donations are welcome. But the donation is based on the great need that exists, not what you happen to have in your pocket or what you won't miss. So I want to encourage people to take out the donation flyers, and there's QR codes to donate several different ways and a place to send in a check. We want to raise several $100s tonight if with the people here in the room. So think about what we've always been talking about and what it means for you to give your resources to that and donate based on that. Finally, you can also be part of fundraising projects with others. In cities across the country, people have raised funds in many different ways, involving new people and reaching out to people they didn't know, selling flowers for Valentine's Day, selling tamales, going to art festivals, going out to lawyers at courthouses. And this is all reports that people go to revcom.us. They can read really interesting reports on doing fundraising and doing amazing fundraising at some of these things. And here in New York City, a crew had a successful and delicious soulful dinner sale. And another one might be coming up. So if you'd like to help with that or have other ideas or would just like to help raise money in some way but you don't have any idea how, come and talk to me after the program and we can work together. And finally, just to repeat that there is this live stream May 28th on Sunday for this $100,000 campaign. Mark it on your calendar. Tune in to the YouTube channel of the REVCOMS and send in statements of support, why you're donating, as well as your donations. You'll get to hear from the tour and the Revolution Club in LA and around the country, what people are doing, their stories, people they're meeting. You've seen some of this on the RNL show. It's really very interesting. There'll be clips from BA and the RNL show, I'm sure, and it promises to be a lot of fun, as well as very serious about revolution. So fundamentally, when you're donating funds to bring about, you are donating to bringing about a whole different world through revolution. So thank you for your donation supporting this movement tonight and in the future. Thank you.
Well, I think it'd be mainly a good idea to kind of wrap a program up, and then people can have some time to talk to each other. It's a weekday night, unless there's somebody with a burning question that they really want to share with everyone right now. There is one in back. Is that Shirley? Yeah. Go ahead. We'll take one more question, and then.
No, not a question. It's a statement. Okay. Sister Shirley from the Forgotten Borough, Staten Island. Okay, I want to make people aware of that this system has done a great job of dividing and conquering us. Okay, and people don't even aren't aware of how well they did it. They have, for years, told Africans, Caribbeans, and other people of color that the blacks born here were lazy and they did not want to work. And they made it easy for them to get help. And they didn't give it to ones who were born here. So they continue to divide and conquer us. And we need to stand together because we need this revolution, whether we know it or not. Because they are powerful. And bottom line is, we need to stick together. Peace.
All right. Now, but to be real clear about one thing, the challenge of tonight is we're going to try and deal with this, the or not. People need to know about this revolution. That's a big point of this. I think before we come to a close, I want to thank the videographers. Okay. Taiwan, Mavi. Oh, she just left. Well, we'll thank her anyway. All right. And Deborah. I appreciate the comment at the very one of the first comments about wanting to see the RNL show every day. I think that's important, actually. I mean, just because we can't do it, there's a lot of things we can't do now that we need to do. But it makes a big difference, and it was a big undertaking, and a lot of people, very few people put it together. I mean, it's astounding that we put it together every week with the small forces. But for those of you who've watched it for some time, you will see the maturity that's come up both in the technical end of it, but also in the content from young people who've actually learned how to do this. That has to be multiplied by 10 and by 100 with correspondence here in New York City and in Chicago and in small towns, we should think to the point where it's a show that's produced in many parts of the country coming together, and the same thing with our website revcom.us, because we're serious about there's no revolution if we don't start bringing forward scores of people and hundreds of people and training them in the science of revolution, in the strategy of revolution, and really fighting like crazy for why it's possible and for the goal of this revolution being the emancipation of all of humanity. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming out. It was really very enjoyable for me, and very important if that leads to us getting this We Are the REVCOMS out and out into society. If you have further questions, you can write to myself at care of the REVCOMS at gmail.com, which is the email of the Revolution Nothing Less show. You can find it, and I will correct what I misspoke at May Day, and that was broadcast. It is YouTube/the REVCOMS, not /. But so it's, and that's also where you will find the the live stream coming up next weekend. So thanks again.